Good morning, everyone. Today we are examining Jeremiah chapters 5 and 6. And as we talked about yesterday, chapter 5 is going to deal with the statements that God makes against Jerusalem, and chapter 6 is going to be against the mountains of Israel. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But let's look at some lessons and some things that we need to pull from these two chapters very briefly this morning. In chapter 5, in the reference to Jerusalem and in the things that are going to take place, of course, God is going to tell Ezekiel to shave his head, and in doing so to scatter the hairs. He's going to utilize the hairs of his head as an illustration of what God is going to do to the people of Jerusalem. And the statement, though, as to the reason why is found in verse 6. When he says, "She has rebelled against my judgments by doing wickedness more than the nations, and against my statutes more than the countries that are around her. For they have refused my judgments, and they have not walked in my statutes. Therefore thus says the Lord God, because you have multiplied disobedience more than the nations that are all around you, and have not walked in my statutes, nor kept my judgments, nor even done according to the judgments of the nations that are all around you. Therefore thus says the Lord God, indeed I, even I, am against you, and will execute judgments in your midst in the sight of the nations." God here says that the reason for these punishments and for the severeness of them is because Jerusalem is doing things that even the wicked nations won't do. It is somewhat similar to the statement that is made in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, where the Apostle Paul will there talk about the man who is having a relationship with his father's wife, something that even the Gentiles, as he puts it, wouldn't do. Here you have the people of God going further than even the rebellious, idolatrous nations around them would go in their spite and in their disobedience to God. And God says, I'm not going to take it. You're going to be a public spectacle because of the level of disobedience to which you are willing to go. It's not just little things here and there. It is full-on rebellion against God. And so he says down in verse number 15 of chapter 5, he says, "So it shall be a reproach, a taunt, a lesson, and an astonishment to the nations that are all around you, when I execute judgments among you in anger and in fury and in furious rebukes. I, the Lord, have spoken." I want you to imagine for just a moment the kind of impact that it would have on the nations around Judah for what is about to happen in Jerusalem over the next couple of years. Remember, these nations have been around the entire time that Judah has been. They have seen God protect her people. They have seen the strange things that occur when people go up against the God of Israel. They have seen all of the different ways that God has blessed and generously given to and helped his people. And now they're going to watch Jerusalem be destroyed in one of the worst ways imaginable through a long and lengthy siege in which the people are going to resort to cannibalism and various other things within the walls of the city. And they're going to watch all of it and realize that this was their punishment for the way that they rebelled against God. That's the message of chapter 5. You brought this on yourselves, not just because you made mistakes, but because you openly, willfully, and hatefully rebelled against God. As you come into chapter 6, a couple of things that I want to point out there. This is the statement against the mountains of Israel, and it's not just against the areas of Judah, but rather it's the mountains. And the reason for it being the mountains of Israel is seen in verse number 3, when he says, "O mountains of Israel, hear the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord God to the mountains, to the hills, to the ravines, and to the valleys. Indeed, I, even I, bring a sword against you, and I will destroy your high places. Your altars shall be desolate, your incense altars shall be broken, and I will cast down your slain men before your idols." The message here of chapter 6 is against the places of idolatry in the land of Israel. The places where they have been going to set up their high places, their worship places to these idolatrous gods. And the theme of chapter 6 is found in 4 different places in the chapter, where God then says, "Then you shall know that I am the Lord." The point of it is Israel has forgotten, or they have refused to acknowledge, by means of their sacrifices, by means of their high places. And even when they will acknowledge that God is there and that God has helped them and God is with them, they try to make the argument that God is not the only God, and therefore they can worship all of these other gods as well, and it's no big deal. Well, it is a big deal to God. And so you have this punishment that is taking place in Israel, in Judah at this time. Remember, the northern kingdom of Israel has been taken away into captivity 100 years earlier, but at the same time, you still have all of the tribes of Israel now present in the land of Judah. And the land that they have inhabited for all this time is still called Israel. And so recognize that that's the sense in which it is being given, not the northern kingdom of Israel in this section. But here you have a situation where God says, "I am going to make sure that all around you know that I am the Lord." 4 times in chapter 6. That is going to be the emphasis. Are we recognizing who God is? Now, I'm not talking about from the standpoint of acknowledging his existence, but recognizing his authority, recognizing the right and the responsibility that he has to utilize that authority in regards to us, not just here, but ultimately in eternity as well. Do we truly know that he is the Lord? Those are some of the things that I found in chapters 5 and 6. I hope that they are beneficial to you. Tomorrow, Lord willing, we'll come back and we will examine chapter 7. But until then, have a great day.